G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now, the Freelander 2, a car that to many out there, because it's a Land Rover, comes from a gene pool that has a bit of a disposition for being shit, and is also the Land Rover you buy when you can't actually afford to buy a Land Rover. But to many others, this is actually one of the better Land Rovers to buy because it shares loads of its mechanical bits and pieces with a whole bunch of other Fords and Volvos. It has some genuine off-road capability, especially when compared to its competition in this class, and now it's on the used market, offers excellent value for money. So, which is it? Are these actually any good, or is this just another Land Rover that's going to break down constantly and cost a fortune to repair? Like, what goes wrong with them? What do they cost to live with on a daily basis? What do they like to live with on a daily basis? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now guys, before we get deep into this video, I should mention that in this video, we're going to be focusing on the Australian variant of the Freelander 2. If you're not watching this from Australia, or if you're not from Australia or not in the Australian market, don't freak out or panic because everything we're going to go over should relate to Freelander 2s in your local market. Also, to keep this video as objective as we possibly could, we've reached out to multiple Freelander and Land Rover owners groups. We've spoken to Land Rover specialist mechanics and technicians. We've trawled through what feels like hours of forums and customer reliability surveys and stuff like that on the internet. So this video is basically the culmination of all of that information. Now also, we need to say a massive shout out and thank you to my mate Amy for lending us her Freelander 2. The thing about Amy is, even though she's an awesome person, she has no sway over what we say about her car. We're going to be as brutal and honest as we can because Amy is intelligent and sophisticated and very cool. And she doesn't get offended like some people in the comments when we criticize the cars that they love. Okay, now the Freelander 2 arrived on our shores way back in 2007 and it wrapped up in 2014. In that time, there's been updates, different models, different variants, different engine packages and transmissions, a whole bunch of different stuff. But to make sense of all that, here's me doing a voiceover. Firstly, it's important to know that the Freelander 2 was a completely new model from the ground up, with pretty much nothing carried over from the earlier model. Trust us, that's a good thing. The Freelander 2 initially came in SE and HSE variants, with XS, the base spec TD4, Sport, and limited edition models arriving later in its life cycle. These trim specs could also be expanded upon with the inclusion of various option packs like a cold climate pack, or a technology pack, or a style, or a premium pack. We'll talk about these in more detail soon. In terms of the petrol power plants, in 2013, the original 3.2-litre six-cylinder engine was replaced by a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder. It's the very same engine as seen in a host of other models from the Ford Mondeo to the Volvo XC60. As far as the diesel variants go, the single 2.2-litre turbo diesel has been available across the lifespan, and like the petrol siblings, this engine can be found in a host of other Peugeot, Citroën and Ford models. Transmission-wise, only a 6-speed automatic was initially available, with a 6-speed manual joining the lineup in 2011. And it's important to remember that even though the Freelander 2 is applauded for its off-road ability in this segment, it does send power to the front wheels under most circumstances, only activating the rear wheels and therefore all-wheel drive when it detects any loss of traction. As far as the updates go, look, Land Rover tinkered with the Freelander 2 all the way through its existence, but the biggest revision arrived for the 2013 year model, receiving, as we touched on, revised and improved mechanical packages plus a full facelift, while the interior upgrades included a restyled centre console, along with a range of updated tech and safety equipment. Now look, obviously we'd love to go over every specific detail of this thing, but it would just take hours, it would get really, really boring. So instead of doing that, what we've done, we've gone and gathered all of that information and we've stuck it in our incredibly handy and completely free ReDriven cheat sheets. Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before handing over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out at redriven.com or in the link below. Now guys, look, if you already own a Freelander 2 or you're some sort of a Freelander 2 expert and you've noticed in this video that we've missed something really, really major, can you please let us know in the comments? Look, we're going to do our best to cover as much as we can about the Freelander 2, but if we miss something, yeah, please let us know in the comments. Okay, so how's the exterior? Well, look, from a design aspect, for me, I love the way these things look. Like, it's kind of got its own thing going on in the Land Rover world, but it's still clearly very much a Land Rover. Like, Land Rover have certainly copped some flack regarding their quality and reliability over time, but there's no denying this is I think it's a great looking thing. What do you think? Do you like the look of it? Let us know in the comments. Now, I should also mention that the aesthetics of the Freelander 2 can vary kind of dramatically depending on what options are fitted. Like if you've got a premium pack Freelander 2, it'll get larger alloy wheels, a bit of a body kit, some tungsten coloured door handles, which looks very, very flash indeed. Also, I should mention, the other day Sam and I were shooting another ReDriven car and we saw one of these come into the car park with like a lift kit and some all-terrains, and it looked awesome. It probably completely ruined the on-road handling characteristics, but at least it looked cool. Now guys, if you are actually genuinely in the market for one of these and you're going to go and test drive it or go and inspect one, make sure that you wear a shirt that you don't really care for, or take a towel, because you're going to need to get underneath. Why? Well, because you're going to need to get under there to look for any signs of off-road abuse. Look, we know that these aren't, the go-to vehicle for those wanting to go proper, seriously off-roading. But the thing is, we do know of many stories where certain Freelander 2 owners have tried to keep up with their more off-roading equipped friends, and in doing so can really damage and stuff some things up under there. So obviously look for like any big gouges or signs of like heavy impact, but here's an interesting one. Look for any spray paint overspray or anything that's been freshly painted, or even if it's like overly clean for how many kilometers on the car. We do find sometimes that people try to hide their mistakes when driving by painting things over. But besides that, look, it's the usual kind of used car stuff. Make sure it hasn't had an accident. So check all the panel gaps, especially around headlights and any plastic parts like that. Make sure all those panel gaps match. Check the paint. Does it all match in both color and in texture? Pop the bonnet, look in the wheel arches, and look in any of the air vents, again, for spray paint overspray. If you see any dodgy overspray, it hasn't been repaired correctly, and that might mean they've cut corners after an accident. Not good. Now, in terms of what commonly goes wrong with these things, we're going to be covering that in a little bit. Okay, so how's the interior? Well, look, from a design aspect, like the exterior, yeah, it's really nice in here. It doesn't feel, overly premium. This is actually an SE, so it's one of the lowest spec models, but it still feels quite nice. Definitely not like plush special Land Rover kind of like maybe that you're expecting, but yeah, it's good. As far as ergonomics and like adjustability goes, really nice. Like all the touch points that you need are, really, really close. Heaps of adjustability for the steering wheel and the seat. You've got some armrests here, which are nice, and these are actually adjustable by, twirling this little knob, which is pretty handy. Yeah, it feels nice. Now I should mention, again, like the exterior, the interior is going to feel and look different depending on which options you pick. Some of the premium ones have, a higher quality leather. Some of the actual, little trinkets and interior jewelry will look a little bit fancier and nicer, depending on the options fitted. Now, as far as wear and tear goes in this particular car, it's interesting. Here we go. First up, the steering wheel leather has not only gone really, really shiny, but it's actually starting to like delaminate in these little sections. The leather on the seats is okay. It's kind of getting that hard feeling to it. It's not overly shiny, but like it, could probably be restored, but yeah, it's just a bit disappointing. On the door cards, these are looking a bit grimy and dirty. Good amount of squidge, but it is obviously wearing. The dashboard is cracking. Up here, that's just splitting all over the place. But the most noticeable thing that is falling apart or falling down is the roof lining. It's kind of got a bit of a cloud thing going on. That's not ideal. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 25 centimeters taller than another quintessentially English icon and Land Rover fangirl, Queen Elizabeth II. This is in my driving position, and yeah, despite the fact that I've got like an upside down waterbed above my head, room's pretty good. Like my knees are sort of scraping up against the back of the seat a little bit, but the seat is quite comfortable. Because the glass house is quite large, it's quite airy and nice in here. Again, despite the fact that there's something constantly sitting on my head, but yeah, it's a nice place to be. Wear and tear wise, besides that obviously, quite good. Like the leather is softer than up front. It clearly isn't used anywhere near as much, but it is aging just a little bit. There's a few little scuffs and scratches here, but it's okay. The Freelander 2 missed out on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the levels of tech will not only vary on the year and trim spec, but also on the options fitted. The bare minimum of tech that the Freelander 2 will come with in terms of early base models will include a 6-speaker stereo, dual-zone climate control, central locking, cruise control, a multi-function screen, steering wheel controls, and a trip computer. Later Freelander 2s, or earlier ones that are fitted with a optional technology pack, can expect an Alpine or Meridian 13 speaker surround sound system, colour DVD navigation system, adaptive bi-zone on headlights with auto levelling, automatic wipers, a reversing camera, parking sensors, and Bluetooth phone integration. Now, in terms of the driving tech, especially off-road, the Freelander 2 comes equipped with an excellent terrain response four-wheel drive system that integrates 4 four-wheel drive modes, each tailoring power delivery and stability control for a range of off-road conditions. And for all of the specific details of which Freelander 2 gets what tech, just jump on ReDriven.com and check out that cheat sheet. So, is it practical? Yes, very practical. Plus there's no load lip, which makes life easy. There's some storage down here as well. Plus the seats fold forward, which makes it even larger for copious amounts of space. In the back, yes, practical. Okay, practicality in the second row, you've got pockets here for your ReDriven Freelander 2 script. It just goes in there or over there. You've got a couple little cubby holes down here. You've got good sized door bends, and they're actually quite easy to get to. You don't have to dislocate your shoulder like some cars to actually get to them. And there's also a couple of cup holders in the armrest and a little hidey spot there. And besides that, I think that's it for the back seat. And practicality up front, you've got a spot here, which I know is normally where a screen goes, but in this particular car it's storage. There's a spot for a half-smoked cigar there, which would be disgusting. There's 2 cup holders here and a third middle cup holder for small pretentious coffees. Nothing wrong with them. Macchiato and espresso is where it's at. You've got a little storage spot here for your SD card holder, perfectly sized for that. Got good sized door bins down here, and I think, the glove box, which is huge, but also quite heavy. Besides that, nothing up there, nothing there, nothing under here. Yeah, decent practicality. Okay, so what goes wrong with these? Well, look, we're going to get to the mechanical stuff in a little bit, but let's start with the exterior. Okay, so first up, there are quite a few reports that the door locks and the door handles are failing, either not locking, not unlocking, sometimes locking out of the car, even worse, locking you inside the car. And even then, it can be like all 4 door handles or just one at a time. Bit of a problem. Now, in 2008, there was a factory recall regarding the sunroofs. This car doesn't have a sunroof, but if it does have a sunroof from 08, make sure that recall has been fixed, because what would happen, the sunroof would become loose and sometimes fly off because the rails were faulty. Even on the non-2008 models, make sure that all the drainage holes around the sunroof have been cleared, because they can overflow, and that basically means water ingress into the interior, which means water into the electronics. Electronics don't like water, and that can create a whole bunch of problems and cost thousands of dollars to fix. Okay, problems and issues inside. There are a few reports that the little locking mechanism here that holds the key sometimes doesn't release the key. It's an ECU glitch because the car's assuming that it's being broken into and just holds onto it for dear life. But then you can't start the car properly and you can't remove the key, and so therefore you can't lock it when you leave. We also know of a few reports where the circuitry for the electric booster for the heater boosts the heat so extremely that it can cause a fire. Also, there are some reports, and it's actually not just a Freelander 2 thing, but all Land Rovers of this sort of year and generation, that the fuel gauge can be faulty and just read completely incorrectly. Worst case scenario, you run out of fuel even though you think you've got like a half a tank left. And also, there are just a whole bunch of sporadic reports of weird like electronic problems going on. Even in this car, like we're having some problems with one of the screens. There's just like weird little electrical gremlins kind of all the time. Also, the gear shift boot is like biodegrading, but to a point where it's leaving, you can actually see it's leaving bits of its leather dandruff all over the center console, and it's kind of gross. Now, before we get into mechanically what goes wrong with these, I need to ask a favor. Can you please hit the like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons if you're enjoying this video? And if you're enjoying ReDriven in general, can you share ReDriven as much as you can? See, the thing is, we just want to keep making this car content for you guys, but the only way to do that is with your support. So by hitting those buttons and sharing ReDriven means we get to make more videos. That'd be awesome. Okay, mechanically, what goes wrong with the Freelander 2? Look, I'd love to tell you, but the thing is, I'm not a qualified mechanic, but Jim is.
Before we get into this, apologies for the audio. It is raining and I still can't control the weather. Some say these are the most reliable of all the modern day Land Rovers. Maybe that's because it's on a Ford platform with a Volvo or a Peugeot motor. The 6-cylinder Volvo engine is a pretty reliable unit. The most common complaint is oil consumption or oil leaks. Now, that can most certainly be attributed to the ridiculous 24,000 kilometre or 12-month service intervals. Now, the 12-month bit is okay, but if you want it to last, service it every 10,000 Ks. Other than that, it's just the typical problems you'd see on any other modern motor car, really. Ignition coil problems, water pump problems, the odd coolant leak here and there. And typically, none of those problems are more expensive to fix than any other late model car, really. As for the diesels, they have a lot of DPF and EGR problems, and it can almost certainly be connected to, again, the 24,000 K service interval. If you want it to last, put a catch can on it and service it at least every 10,000 Ks. Another thing with the diesels, they have a timing belt, and the scheduled replacement is 240,000 Ks, which is almost twice as much as most other manufacturers. The problem with that is the water pump, which is driven by the timing belt, quite often doesn't last that long. So if it fails, it takes out the timing belt with it, and you've got a catastrophic failure on your hands. So we would recommend servicing it at least every 125,000 Ks, and quite likely then avoiding a catastrophic failure. One thing the petrol and diesel have in common is transmission and driveline issues. Now again, servicing those more frequently can help, but it won't guarantee you're not going to have problems with it. Also, the petrol and diesel, they're both plagued with electrical problems. And now it's not just one major problem that affects them all, it's more a case of they're all affected by a whole bunch of random problems. And not all of them are expensive to fix, it's more so they're just bloody annoying. Look, overall, because it's got a lot of Ford and Volvo parts in it, if you can find one that has had a really good, solid service history, it's probably going to be okay. But remember, it's still a Land Rover.
So is it safe? Well, the Freelander 2 received a full 5-star ANCAP safety rating from launch, and it retained those 5 stars all the way through its life cycle. So according to ANCAP, it's safe. But for an overview of what safety tech and features these come with, here's me doing another voiceover, but this time I'm going to do it like as fast as I possibly can. The bare minimum of safety tech you can expect will include 7 airbags, anti-lock brakes, electronic brake force distribution, electronic stability control, traction control, hill holder, seatbelt reminders, and seatbelt protectioners for the first row, while the second row can apparently go and get stuffed. Now, for all the details of which Freelander gets what levels of safety tech, just jump on ReDriven.com and check out that cheat sheet, or click on the link in the description below. Okay, so what's it like to drive? Well, this is the 6-cylinder version, and engine-wise, power-wise, like, really nice. Like, it sounds good, it goes really well, it's really, really smooth, lovely engine. Now, there are heaps of reports that these things have like heaps of road noise and even wind noise at higher speeds, but look, I don't know if it's the tyres fitted to this, but it sounds fine. Like, obviously there's a bit of road and wind noise there, it's a big lug of a thing, but it's not bad at all. Like, even in terms of rattles, like, there are reports that when driving these things can rattle like crazy. This one, there's tiny little ones, like if you really poke and prod at things, it rattles a bit, but again, not bad. The suspension and the steering, look, the suspension is really smooth and compliant, but as it's gotten older, it does that thing where, or does this thing where when you turn, you can almost feel the car like kind of falling on its weight, like it's really, really top heavy, but then that kind of upsets the steering, so you don't really have any confidence. If you're doing, freeway speed or even, the speeds out on these country roads, I'd be really scared. If you have to avoid something, like steer around something, it doesn't inspire any confidence. But another positive, visibility is excellent. Like, it's not a massive SUV, it's kind of mid-size, but because you're in this kind of command driving position, and the glass house is quite large, and because it's sort of a square vehicle, it's really easy to judge the parameters. So, parking in a tight car parking spot, or, trying to get through some tight traffic, a breeze. Look, overall, yeah, it's a pretty nice thing to drive. The suspension and the steering, maybe leave a little bit to be desired, but besides that, yeah, it's good. Not special, not amazing, just, yeah, good. Pricing here in Australia kicks off from as little as $8,000, but you know what? An $8,000 Freelander 2 is basically just a really, really expensive nightmare wrapped in a kind of sexy SUV body. At the other end of the spectrum, and thanks to the current inflated used car market, some of the owners of these are asking, around the $40,000 range for used examples of these, which just seems a bit insane. Something like this, a 2010 SI6 SE in interesting condition with, a few kilometres on the clock, anywhere around about the 15, to high teens mark. And for pricing elsewhere on this big planet of ours, here's a graphic. Land Rover claim a fuel consumption figure of anywhere between 6.6 to 11.2 litres per 100 Ks. This particular car is claimed at 10.7. And look, we'd love to tell you what it's actually doing, but the problem is the little screen that displays that has completely locked up and we can't read what it's done. Sorry for interrupting the video. We're actually out on location shooting another car that's going to be on ReDriven in a few weeks' time. I need to apologise because the trip computer actually was working. Sam discovered that on the way home, you just have to push the button at the end of the stalk. And this particular car was returning 11.7 litres per 100 Ks, so my apologies. I didn't look carefully enough, sorry. Land Rover offered a 3-year, 100,000 kilometre warranty on all Freelander 2s, meaning that all of these are now completely out of warranty, and that's a bit of a concern. Servicing is recommended at every 12 months or 24 or 26,000 Ks, again, depending on the variant. But to be honest, we'd be having it seen to far more regularly than that. Any more than every 10,000 Ks is too much. Now also, if you're getting any work done, which let's be honest, you're probably going to have to, just be careful of what people charge you for labour costs and even part costs. Yes, it's a Land Rover, but underneath all this, it's mainly Ford components, so you can save some money buying Ford parts instead of Land Rover parts. And a lot of workshops will charge a premium rate for a premium badge, but again, it's kind of just a Ford wearing a nice suit. So yeah, be careful what you get charged. Also, if you already own one of these or you're buying one, make sure you join one of the owners groups. We joined owners groups to do the research for this video and reached out to them, and they were phenomenal help. So yeah, owners groups, thank you. And yeah, if you're owning one or buying one, join the owners groups. Okay, so should you buy one? Probably not. Look, the Freelander 2 is one of the better Land Rover products to buy, mainly because not many of the critical components are actually a Land Rover at all. And if you do require an SUV of this size and for this budget that has genuine off-roading chops, it is one of the more talented vehicles out there. Plus, it looks great, it's lovely to drive on road, and yes, it does come with some brand panache, but look, if you're rarely, if ever, driving off-road and you're buying one of these because it's a Land Rover, come on, you're better than that. Don't fall for the marketing hype and all the image. You're smarter than that. Come on. See, there are other SUVs at this budget that will drive just as nicely, maybe if not even better on-road, that come with the same or better levels of tech and creature comforts, that are just as practical yet have a far better reputation for reliability, and if something were to go wrong, should cost far less to repair. And sure, the likes of the Mazda CX-5, the Toyota RAV4, the Hyundai Tucson, and loads of others won't quite match the Freelander 2 off-road, and they'll lose in the battle of brand snobbery, but the alternatives from most of the Japanese or South Korean manufacturers are just far more intelligent choices. Look, there are those Freelander 2s out there that have never had a problem, that are in absolutely perfect working order, but that's because they've been maintained thoroughly and they have a complete service history and have had an owner that adores the car in the first place. But even buying one of those ones, it's still a risk, but it's far more of a calculated risk. Look, taking that risk is entirely up to you, but a perfect one of these, and a seriously perfect one of these, is still a brilliant thing. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, what did you think of the Freelander 2? Let us know in those comments, and please hit those like, subscribe, and bell buttons, and share ReDriven as much as you can. We love making this car content for you. We want to make more of it, and the only way we can do that is with your support. So hitting those buttons and sharing us will help us keep doing that. See you next time. Buy because it shares a whole bunch of here we go, engines and transmissions across a whole bunch of different variants, and come on, here we go. Saw one of these like with a lift kit and some all-terrains, and there's a motorbike going to come past, going to ruin the entire take. Not a Harley bike, so it actually sounds good. What is that? Yeah, nice. See, that's what a motorbike should sound like, not like a gastric problem. Okay, here we go. Now, another motorbike. Royal Enfield, beautiful. Here we go. What did you think of the Freelander 2? Make sure you message. Here we go.